Europe Central Asia Regional Forum 2022, Review, Rethinking, Reform, the 30th Anniversary of United Nations Minorities Declaration. On May 2 to 3, 2022, the Europe Central Asia 2022 Regional Forum was held. Discussions were held at the meeting dedicated to the 30th anniversary of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Persons Belonging to National or Ethnic, Religious, and Linguistic Minorities. Representatives of the Cultural Center of the Caucasus Yezidis, David Babov and Oksana Smuva, participated in the meeting in Vienna in an online format. The meeting was also attended by representatives of several states, intergovernmental organizations, including United Nations agencies and mechanisms, national human rights institutions and other relevant national bodies, academics and experts on minority issues, representatives of minorities, as well as civil society organizations specializing in minority issues. The Cultural Center of the Caucasus Yazidis mainly works in the field of protection of rights and freedoms, the cultural heritage of the Yazidi community in the countries of the South Caucasus, and therefore the problems of the Yazidi community were raised at the forum. The representatives in their speeches noted that the countries of the South Caucasus are multinational states and have a desire to create democratic institutions. The speakers noted that despite the development of democratic institutions, the success of states in supporting and developing ethnic minorities, in particular the Yazidi community, is insignificant. Today, it can be stated that the participation of Yezidis in all areas of socio-political life in Armenia remains very limited, especially they are insufficiently represented in representative municipal bodies, in the field of science, sports and culture. In Georgia, in fact, the Yazidi community was forced to emigrate to neighboring countries, and if formulated in percentage terms, this is more than 90% of the Yazidi community. Despite a lot of obligations and signed international conventions of the UN and the Council of Europe, the Yazidi community of Armenia and Georgia continues to be subjected to veiled and non-veiled, everyday forms of discrimination. Let's take the most common example when in Georgia, in the multinational state of the South Caucasus, submitting a resume to any company or organization, the CV of a representative of national minorities, and in particular a Yazidi, will occupy the last lines of the list of those who want to get a job. In fact, a person not with the surname of the titular nation will not be able to get the desired workplace. Based on this, young representatives of the Yazidi national minority, graduating from higher educational institutions, cannot get a job according to their profile, which leads to the exclusion of national minorities in the processes of public life of the countries of residence. The right of Yezidis to education in their native language is getting worse and worse. The socio-economic situation of the Yazidi community of Armenia is getting worse and worse. The right to education in their native language has been completely lost in Georgia. And the violation of such fundamental rights and freedoms only increases over the years. The topic of access to culture by the Yazidi community is also a topic of concern. A number of Yazidi activists are trying to cover the problems of the Yazidi community on such serious platforms as the UN and the Council of Europe. Reports on the situation of the rights and freedoms of the Yazidi community are available on the websites of these organizations. Representatives of the Yazidi community noted that they would like their voice to be heard, and they read out a number of recommendations for listeners and the expert community at the forum. There is a need to make real efforts to create effective anti-discrimination mechanisms in the country that are aimed at countering veiled forms of discrimination in the Caucasus region. There is a need to introduce and implement unprecedented international legislation on the relations of national minorities at the regional level. It is important to eliminate the components of domestic policy that actively encourage ethnic and religious xenophobia and intolerance, which is also intensified due to the asymmetric attitude of the state towards various ethnic minorities, in particular the Yezidis. To implement the implementation of international legislation on relations of national minorities at the regional level. Create monitoring groups that will monitor political organizations trying to assimilate national minorities, in particular the Yezidis. Tighten control over the financing of organizations that incite hatred and xenophobia towards national minorities. To finance and protect those NGOs and NGOs that work on the rights of national minorities at the regional level. International organizations should remind states to observe favorable conditions that contribute to the maintenance of the religious identity of the Yazidi national minority, create a structure that will give recommendations for the preparation of curricula provided for national minorities, Yezidis, in public schools. Finance statistical monitoring of quotas for national minorities, including Yezidis, to state institutions to identify violations based on the Framework Convention for the Protection of National Minorities. Certain structures that monitor etiquette in the media, the Office of the Public Defender, the relevant parliamentary committees to carry out annual monitoring in order to identify the use of hostile, offensive and xenophobic statements on ethnic grounds in print and electronic media.